right. I'm here with an old high school friend, actually a junior high school friend, Chris Pelletier. Chris, why don't you introduce yourself, and I'll try to help you fill in the gaps, and we'll talk about Chris's book. He's living in Washington right now, and he can tell us more about that. I happen to be in town. I rented a car and came up to visit with Chris and learn more about his book and catch up.
Thanks, Brett. Yeah, as he introduced, my name is Chris Pelletier. I've come up with a book called Son of Atlantis, Atlantis Trilogy, Book 1. So obviously the first book of a three-parter, which follows the trials and tribulations of a 15-year-old named Kylos. It's a young adult fantasy, but it's geared not only for young adults, but adults as well. It's got a little bit of something for everyone.
How long did it take you to write this book, Chris?
I started it in late 2008. I was in Japan teaching English at the time, and I completed it. I finished writing it, all the drafts, probably in 2010 or so, and then I did multiple edits upon edits upon edits upon edits, just trying to just always keep combing through it and always missing stuff and always catching something more. So it was definitely a lot of work, but a labor of love, I'd have to say.
So what have been some of the reactions you've gotten so far on the book?
Some of the people who've read it have really liked it, and they wanted to know more, which is always a good sign to me, that they did appreciate it. And of course I told them that's going to, well, I was keeping a mental checklist as far as, did I address that? Did I address that? Or is that going to be addressed? Because it is a trilogy. It is a little marathon that's going on, and this is book 1, just an introduction to the main characters, and
so
and the setting.
What's the word for like a trilogy, but for six? Because I know Star Wars is a sextigy or something like that.
I think once you get past 3, it's a saga.
Oh,
like that. I guess that the Percy Jackson series saga. Yeah.
So, but on that note, I wondered if when you planned this trilogy, if you did something kind of like Lucas did when he, and maybe Tolkien did this too, but he seemed to have the whole high-level story somewhat mapped out or thought through, and then he went back and embellished it for each part in the trilogy. Have you done any of that, or are you just thinking linearly?
The beginning, middle, and end kind of came to me. Just maybe a la Lucas. I mean, I haven't read too much how George Lucas came up with Star Wars. I mean, I knew that he had he had 9 episodes in mind, but
I did not know.
Yeah.
So do we have still potentially 3 movies that he needs to make before he kicks
Mark
the bucket?
Hamill and
the bucket?
Harrison Ford and such. I don't know if they're up for but at least a lot of novelizations have followed. But
like, you must learn the ways of the Force. You must become a Jedi. I don't know who that you is, but I know it's Ben Kenobi still talking from.
That's true.
From the Netherworld. That is a name I haven't heard in a long time. I am sitting here holding an autographed copy, and it says, "Brett, live in glory, Chris Pelletier." So by live in glory, does that transcend the book in hand?
I think. Well, I mean, I wrote that just because it's kind of the spirit of the book. Just it's Kylos's raison d'être, his dream to pursue.
Parlez-vous français?
Oui, je parle français.
I don't.
Okay.
I wish I did.
Das ist schade.
Das ist schade. Ich verstehe. Я понимаю по-русски тоже. That's Russian. So I learned a couple foreign languages. This is kind of a class reunion for Chris and myself because we're in Washington State. I had a tech conference down in Portland, and this is one of my inaugural podcast episodes. And I thought, what better way to kick this off than talking to an old friend about publishing a book. So this isn't just about, it's not just about this book that Chris wrote, but certainly it's a great time to catch Chris because he's just beginning this adventure of selling this trilogy. Not only selling, but writing it. Writing it is...
Right. Book 2 is in progress, so yeah.
But I know from software development that you have to write the software, yes, and you have to have, and before you do that, you need to have a plan and a design. And those things don't just fall from the sky either. But
true.
Yeah.
I mean, there is the organic approach to writing where you just kind of let things flow, which I did for a space opera novel called Sid and Imp, which I have on the back burner, which I'm going to get to again one day. But this Atlantis trilogy just had a lot of meaning for me, just on a creative level and dare I say a spiritual level too. Just
how dare you, sir?
I know, but it's
how dare you, sir?
It's been quite an ordeal that
so
I put
Kylos. Why do you say dare I say a spiritual level? Are you ashamed of being spiritual?
No,
are you ashamed of your spirituality? Are you a spiritual person?
I am, and I think a lot of my spiritual ways are channeled through this book. It's funny because I was in China after the earthquake that I experienced in Japan. So come book 3 in the trilogy, I will know how to write about that fear and whatnot of a natural disaster.
So you were in China, you say?
Well, I was in Japan at the time.
Japan. Did I mishear you? Did you mention China?
Yeah, but so a quick anecdote that it was 2:45 in the afternoon, and on a Tuesday, I believe. But I was about to teach a 2-year-old and his mother some English, and I was in the bathroom. I mean, that's when all great earthquakes happen, it seems. And I feel a little rock and tremble, and I thought, oh, great. So zip up and go out the door.
Probably at any moment in time, someone's in the bathroom.
Right, and it's always me. And so I'm to blame for the whole thing. And except this thing wasn't going down. This was just getting bigger and bigger. And I was kind of like, exit stage right. And so kind of went out the doors and tried to encourage the mother and the son to come out as well. And the Japanese staff were doing their duty and staying inside. It's like, I want to be on the street, I think. I mean, we weren't in Tokyo, so it was lower buildings. It was just a 2-story building with a restaurant above us, but it just was not going down, and the light posts were shaking. I thought I was John Cusack in 2012, and
I missed that one.
Okay.
I try to catch all the apocalyptic films, but somehow I missed that one.
Yeah, it's good special effects, of course, to be seen whether that's going to happen in a couple months. But
do you think that? Well, shifting gears slightly, that's a topic probably for another podcast. Your Japanese experience alone, and that must have been fascinating because you had to clear out of there at a certain point, or just become like swept up in the tsunami, basically, or the nuclear disaster, or any number of calamities were coming your way.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's an adventure, that's like, I never saw anything like that up close and personal, other than, the political upheavals that I've seen. But when I did pass through and was in Kiev after Chernobyl, when I think it was safe, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
I've never quite felt the same since then. As you can see, my brain is glowing green a little bit.
But I just thought it was your aura, but
better to be green this day and age than some other colors.
That's true.
But then I guess shifting gears, because the adventures that you've seen in life, have they fed into your writing?
They have. I mean, Atlantis. What do you imagine when you think of Atlantis?
Well, for me, it's the number one factor about Atlantis right now, in this from my perspective, is that it's underwater. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if the story here is before Atlantis was submerged.
Yes, it's set like a year prior.
Okay.
I mean, the book one is set a year prior to it actually experiencing the cataclysm, which put it under. And I mean, I have a great love of history, especially ancient history, and a love of mythology, and so I combine the two, along with I did a lot of scuba diving when I was younger with a good mutual friend of ours, Chris Olson, and I worked on ships for 5 years. So as far as the scenes within the book dealing with the ocean, and I mean, obviously Atlantis is an island, and its lifeblood is commerce via trade and such. In the book, that would be a reality of the time.
And obviously these are real. Everything in here is real. There's no fictitious characters in here, right? This is all history, right?
No.
You mentioned mythology.
Yeah, I tried to tie in a bit of Greek mythology into it too.
You're the one, I think. When I first became your friend on Facebook, I noticed that you were quoting a lot of was it Roman quotes?
Latin, yeah.
So where did these quotes? You had like was it Latin quote of the day or a Roman wisdom?
Latin quip du jour. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought du jour was French.
That's true.
Once again.
Yeah.
Even though I don't speak French, I mean I know that.
Yeah, I'd studied Latin a bit too, so
Sweet.
I think that's
I wish I
kind of where my Roman history.
I could have benefited from either Latin or French, I think.
Well, that's what you get when you move to Omaha, Nebraska from Stillwater. Just you get your mind in a tizzy, and then all of a sudden French goes out the door, and what's there for you but a new pilot Latin course? And so I embraced that wholeheartedly for my last 2 years of high school.
So then, I guess we're getting a sense of you being kind of a intellectual. But you didn't seek out when you went to Asia. You weren't seeking out intellectual pursuits. You were doing this for a living, right? You're teaching, right?
No, actually, I was teaching, but my reason to go to Japan was kind of intellectually or spiritually motivated.
Okay.
I was working on ships in the Gulf of Mexico and up in Alaska for a year, but working in the oil field, actually. Funny that a theater major would be doing that, but and life cast me in strange ways, and so I'd been working on there, and of course on a ship you have a lot of time, so would just be playing darts, drinking Coca-Cola, and reading a ton, and just got into Eastern philosophy a bit, and so
interesting. Who are these people, and why are they there, and what kind of ships are we talking about, and what are they doing for a living?
Well, salt of the earth.
You said oil field, right?
Yeah.
Natural gas or oil?
Oil,
like
petroleum.
Black gold.
Black gold, Texas tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just off the shores of Louisiana and all the way through Alabama and Texas. I mean, you'd have no idea.
Petroleum?
Yeah, we'd serve service to several.
Now wait a second. Are you the guy who caused that oil spill?
Wasn't
Not-
me. No. By that, I was in Japan by then. But as a result of that big Exxon Valdez spill back in '89, the company I'd worked for had a contract up there with the oil people, as far as like they had to have escorts for these tankers, and the contract was winding down, and so that gave me an opportunity to work up in Alaska for a year. So probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever.
I'm jealous.
Yeah.
Okay, that actually just to keep to give you a chance to breathe. I just want to say I always wanted to go to Alaska. Still haven't gotten there. I'm as close now as I've ever been to Alaska, in being in Washington State. But back in the day, I guess mid '90s, they enticed me onto a project with IBM where we were allegedly going to Alaska, among other places. But some teams ended up in, I think, Ogallala, Kansas, or somewhere, and others. No offense, because we have listeners from there.
Yeah.
But we have listeners all around the world. Are you kidding?
Konnichiwa.
But the thing is, some people got to go to their wish list of places. Like, and I did. I saw Colorado, Arizona, parts of Wyoming, Texas, Nevada. Where else? But some other flatter places. We won't mention any names, but even Texas, you love it, but there's places that are just flat, and there's literally tumbleweeds and stuff, and that's cool. But what I found is, being from Minnesota and Wisconsin, I appreciated some of the states that actually had hills and actually have greenery and water and stuff. I find that nice and comforting. So Colorado struck me as that. But what I guess I was saying is, they got us all interested in this project because on the hope of going to Alaska.
Yeah.
And so to tie that back, and I got to go a lot of those places, not Alaska, unfortunately, but it was that was how they called me to adventure on this one. It's everybody wants to go to Alaska, so let's bait the hook and then set it.
Yeah.
And they got me, and that's how my consulting career kind of got started. I went from IT to more creative software development, but anyway, it was that adventure seeking, like going to Alaska, that kind of got me started. So, and I would imagine you've been following those calls to adventure, if you will. It sounds like you've been pursuing some of those opportunities because, like you said, for intellectual reasons or a sort of spiritual pursuit. But do you think that just makes you who you are, and that led you to this moment where you decided to write this book?
Yeah, I'd always had an interest in writing. Probably since fourth grade, I discovered a desire for it, and just in university had taken several courses on it. And as I mentioned, I did write that space opera, Sid and Imp.
Can we look this up? Is this available?
Not yet. That's still in draft form. But I think a lot of what I've experienced is, just to answer your other question, is incorporated in this book. And then there are several other themes that I felt important that I wanted to address, either for young adults or for adults as well.
So, I wonder, I walk a fine line here of wanting to avoid spoilers, and wanting to just encourage people to read the book, What kind of insight can you give us into the themes that are most important in this book?
Well, pursuing your dream and sticking to it no matter what life throws in your way. I think that's a big one that the main character Kylos faces. I mean, I'm such a bad man. I put my character through hell. But
What does the name Kylos mean?
Just something that I don't know. It just came to me and sounded
Sounds good.
sounds good. Sounds Atlantean in my mind. So
you put Kylos through hell. Give us just one hellish example.
Just almost immediately he's at odds with the antagonist, and it seemed unlikely, but just the antagonist has some issues, but he was just helping his best friend, and got caught between the antagonist and his best friend and stuck up for his friend, and thus had ongoing encounters with the antagonist.
Would you care to name the antagonist?
Oh yeah, his name is Bolero.
How do you spell that?
Balero.
Okay. So, would you generalize on would you call this a tale of good and evil, or is it more nuanced than that?
It's all gray, I guess. I mean,
I seem to
as far as like, I know what you're asking, and I tried to base it in reality as opposed to like a Darth Vader, or versus Luke having those very clear cut, easy. I mean,
really.
I mean, the antagonist is bad, but I mean, I didn't. But I tried to make him naturally bad, not sinister. Well, no,
okay.
For the sake of being sinister. I mean, it just his personality quirk makes him bad.
Like I've noticed in the Star Wars trilogy, there seem to be, and I somehow I always now when I'm thinking these trilogies, I also think of the Lord of the Rings trilogy because now that's all fresh in our minds.
And The Hobbit's coming out.
That's right.
Looking forward to that one.
Chris is a major cheerleader for this upcoming milestone event, and I'm excited too. So, but when I compare those trilogies, I mean, those both have good and evil characters. It's just obvious. The orcs, there's not a lot of redeeming qualities, right?
Yeah.
And whereas the dwarves, I mean, they've got these different classes or races and subcultures that just seem to have uniformly good and evil tendencies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Although I'm sure you can say there's bad dwarves but can you say there's good orcs? Have you ever met a good orc?
There were 3.
Oh, okay.
No. Yeah.
So I guess when I'm looking at Star Wars is even a little more nuanced than that because there's good in Anakin, and that's a little bit more of a complexity.
That I mean, when obviously you and I are the generation where Episode 4 was Episode 1 to us, and
right.
I mean, it was clear. I mean, it was just Darth Vader's redemption, but it was even made more clear with Episodes 1, 2, and 3. Just his fall from grace, and then
pretty much
his redemption.
Three was like when Anakin really turned to the dark side for good, right?
Yeah.
That was a dark movie. I mean,
yeah,
but enjoyable. I enjoyed some of those. Whereas I think a lot of people have really been trashing the first 3 episodes, in favor of 4, 5, and 6, the originals. But for me, I enjoyed the 4, 5, and 6 when they first came out, and I enjoyed 1, 2, and 3 when they came out because it just happened to coincide with when my firstborn son was old enough to start, learning about Star Wars. And I mean, he was learning about Star Wars before Episode 1 came out, The Phantom Menace. He had Star Wars Legos, Star Wars. We have laser discs of the original recordings of the episodes 4, 5, and 6. And so we watched those, and nowadays you can't even watch those because they're, I mean, not the laser disc, that's obviously hard to watch, but the content on those discs has been superseded by a digital retelling of the story in subtle ways. But it's all good. I like everything Star Wars related. And some people just are too snooty for their own good and too critical.
I agree. I mean, with me in a lot of movies and stories, it's all good. Some's just better.
That's true. Yeah. And I'll be the first to admit, after all that rant, I still believe that episode 4 and 5 are probably the best. But that 1, 2, and 3 still have a place. And you can watch them in order, and it's still really good.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, episode 1, Liam Neeson.
I really
top-notch actor. I mean, and Ewan McGregor.
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I have enjoyed Liam Neeson in all of his movies. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think of Schindler's List, and I think that was one of his big breakout films. But there's
I remember first seeing him in
Begins.
The Bounty. Did you ever see The Bounty in the 80s with the very young Mel Gibson, and Liam Neeson was in the crew?
No, I didn't know that.
And my favorite actor, and can't remember his name. Hello. British actor. Anthony Hopkins.
Okay.
Captain Bligh. Yeah. Just a retelling of the Captain Bligh, Fletcher Christian mutiny on the ship The Bounty, made in the 80s. And a lot of top name. Daniel Day-Lewis in there.
Wow.
Abraham Lincoln. Yeah.
Yeah. Honest Daniel. So now we're talking film, and I blame myself. But yeah, The Hobbit's coming out. So let's talk about the culture around the phenomena that we're now experiencing. When Peter Jackson comes out with a trilogy of films based on this immortal, legendary trilogy, and then now we're also getting The Hobbit made as a film. Do you think that that's taking away from reading? Do you think that kids are now being introduced to these realms of fantasy through watching screens instead of reading books?
It's entirely possible. I mean, when I was studying ESL back in 1992, when I was thinking about getting into ESL teaching, I was
English as a second language for you.
Thank you.
Acronym challenged listeners.
And I had visited the high school in Burnsville, and the English teacher there was complaining about how regular English teachers were just feeding the kids, instead of watching or reading the Scarlet Letter.
They'd watch the Demi
Moore version, or, I mean, teachers do that probably just to give kids a quick fix. But but to base the education solely on that and deprive them of the reading, that's of course not good. I remember watching in junior high in Oakland, one of my favorite stories, Count of Monte Cristo, Richard Chamberlain version. There was subsequently a better film version, but
how is his last name? The author, is it Dumas?
Yes.
Is it Alexandre Dumas?
Alexandre Dumas. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, Dumas.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a famous Wendy's commercial or something that had a nameplate that said Dumas, I think is what it said.
Okay.
That's a different tangent. Let's not go there.
But yeah, I think films might. I think retelling a classic on film, of course, it's hard. Very few cases where the film outdoes the book, but there are some where kind of mediocre book, say Scarlet Pimpernel, for example, and just a lot of film adaptations have seen better than the mediocre writing. So it does happen, but
how about this? Your kids are still pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll say I'm kind of the I'm kind of new school on this. Like I know that there's people complain that there's too many screens in our lives, and that we're a bunch of consumers and we're not producing as much anymore, which I feel is true. But I have still been pushing screens at my kids at an early age. Like I'll still give them laptops or let them play with computers. And what I found is that yes, there's a lot of scary stuff out there, a lot of junk that you just don't want kids to see. But there's also a whole world of information. You know, even just Wikipedia itself is just incredible. So I do think you can no longer choose to abstain from all of the media if you want to, you know, if you want to be connected to the rest of the outside world. But it's kind of interesting to ask if we're not pushing books as much as we should. And I just, you know, I think that's what I find comforting about knowing, you know, there's people like you that I know, and other people, like I have other friends and colleagues that are publishing books and selling them online. My dad is doing it.
Really?
Another colleague at my current contract, he's got a science fiction book out there. I actually have it on my iPad. I'll show it to you after we're done here. That's Eric Herkus. Maybe I'll get him on to talk some other time. But Christopher Pelletier is still with us, and we're still just rambling here. Chris, if you have any like important ground that you want to cover, or just things that you want people to know about the book, so that they'll be interested enough either to, you know, go out to your website or actually buy this for themselves or for their children. What do you want to tell them that'll just you know, drive it home that this is the right type of story for to get their kids interested in reading, or to get them interested in your trilogy? This is the right kind of thing to open up to. How would you sell that?
It's going to appeal to kids in a way because, I mean, it is a 15-year-old, and whether you're 15, you know, 12, 13, 14, 15 through 18, they're going to be able to connect with the character. Even though I've put it in antiquity, there's still a lot of, I mean, I was just speaking with a colleague today at work, and I was commenting on a quote saying, like, gossip, like those ancient Roman quips. One was, gossip is the fastest thing in the universe. Right. They thought that 2,000 years ago, you know. So, right. I mean, that's maybe one thing I want people to take away from this, too, that human beings have not really fundamentally changed. Sure, technology has changed, but our thinking, our anger, our passions, our love, our disdain, all of that has been experienced and will be experienced again and again. So the character, even though it's in antiquity, the modern readers, of course, are going to relate to my main character and his friend, Peleus. And the adults, especially in this day and age, Kylos is the son of a single father, actually. His mother died. So perhaps adults might, if they read it, come to grips, or not come to grips, but just come to understand and associate, perhaps on a level with what Zeustros, Kylos' father, encounters, and a lot of the regrets of his life. I kind of bend the rules a bit. Young adult fantasy, young adult fiction typically follows a young character, which it does, my book does, with Kylos, but I do bend the rules a bit and get into Zeustros' head as well, so that there's understanding both from young and old, so it has a lot to offer. There's action, a little bit of romance, but everything that I think makes a well-rounded story. I love the story. At times I didn't write it thinking, oh, this is going to be a commercial hit or anything. I just wrote it because, it came to me, and I really like the story myself. And I think audiences or readers are going to enjoy the character, enjoy experiencing the trouble, and are going to wonder after every chapter, what happens next.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sold, but of course, I already have my signed copy in hand. How does somebody else find out? If they want to buy this, how can they take a look at this? Dude, we have a website, right? Well, I can link to it in our show notes. Also, because I know I had it in my cart on Amazon, and my wife said, "You know what? Let's wait until Christmas, Brett." And little did she know that I was going to end up, coming here and actually
Christmas came early,
getting a signed copy. Yeah, this is like Christmas. So we'll link to the Amazon page for this book.
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon, and
or
then
I
on a blog, you can actually read a sample chapter or two just to.
Oh, perfect! So I'll link to those things too.
Yeah, and a little YouTube commercial just to get the feel of it.
So, and now I'm walking over to the Chris side of the fence here to see how long we've got. How much have we done? Well, that's about right. That's probably that's a wrap. It's been fun talking about the book. I'll certainly chime in later when I've gone through the whole book, and I can't wait. I'm excited, and I'm kind of proud to have a high school friend that's already publishing children's books for one, but I'm also excited to share it with my kids. So thanks, Chris.
Well, thank you. I look forward to what your children think, and hopefully they'll share it with other children. And
you bet. And they'll be beating a path to your door for book 2. When can we expect a book 2?
Probably another 2.5, but
2.5 years. Are you saying?
I'm thinking about another 2.5 years, so maybe 2016 ish.
Oh, okay. Well, so obviously you believe that life doesn't end on December 21st, 2012.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because that kind of inspired.
Spoiler alert.
No. But as far as like how the idea came about, it kind of tied into that. I heard a bit about it while I was in Japan, and just through some of my research came across the word Atlantis. I had no idea what Atlantis was, so
really.
I knew what it was, but I didn't know anything about it per se.
Right.
Of course, we all learned about Zeus and Apollo and whatnot, but not really much was known by me about Atlantis. So started to do some research, got some books, and realized that Plato was the one who actually wrote about Atlantis in his book Timaeus and Critias.
Oh wait, let's pose with that book so I can show our readers. Here we go. He is holding up a copy of Timaeus and Critias.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't speak
Greek.
Yeah.
Well, it's quite funny with this. Timaeus, it's mostly a talk of, of course, Socrates, as Plato does, talks about the universe and such, but...
That's his imaginary friend, isn't it?
Yeah. No. But in the second book, Critias, he talks more about Atlantis, and it's interesting because if you'll indulge me here, Zeus, god of gods, who reigns by law, did have the eyes to see such things. He recognized the degenerate state of their fair line and wished to punish them as a way of introducing more harmony into their lives. He summoned all the gods to a meeting in the most awesome of his dwellings, which is located in the center of the entire universe, and so sees all of creation. And when the gods had assembled, he said... And it ends. Kind of like that Aztec calendar.
Oh, we should have ended the podcast right there. No, but that reminds me, maybe we should have you read like just a little blurb from Son of Atlantis.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Round out this discussion.
Okay.
Tell us what you're picking and why.
Well, just from the first chapter, which is called Snakes, just to give a little introduction to Kylos. And so you can hear a little bit about Atlantis. Kylos stretched out on his back in an open grassy fields, his hands stroking the smooth blades which bent without resistance. A lilac-scented breeze shifted the surrounding green spear's points to and fro in the gentle rhythm of an afternoon dance, and the sun's warmth caressed his face. Although the presence of predators was always a danger in the wild, he did not sense any nearby, so he relaxed and enjoyed the day. In the distance, he could make out the trumpeting of elephants over the rustling of the grass. He rolled over to his stomach on the soft earth and propped himself up onto his elbows to survey the land through the grass. A wall of old oaks stood off to the west, and dark mountains lay to the south. Snow-crowned Mount Atlas was by far the most prominent peak. With an eager push, he got up and stretched, taking in a healthy dose of the fresh air. His desire to see different sights conquered his lethargy, so he tromped through the knee-high blades in search of a new scenery and any sort of adventure he could find on the way. He did not know his destination, but that didn't matter. This was his time. School and his father did not hold him back. Curfews and strict rules did not apply out here in the wild. Being away from the big city refreshed his spirits, but he wished Peleus could be with him. Adventures are always best shared, Kylos thought. His excursion took him to a river where a group of 3 middle-aged women and a girl who looked to be his age were doing some laundry in the clean, gurgling stream. They stopped their labors to take a look at him. "Greetings of the day," one of the women said to Kylos. He nodded and replied, "Greetings." "It's a good day for laundry, eh?" another one asked with a smile. "I suppose it is," Kylos said, looking at the sky. The young girl looked up from her work and stared at him. The soft lines of her face were framed by her long, raven-colored hair, which dropped unbraided past her shoulder blades. She gave him a smile, and Kylos fidgeted in place, but managed to smile back. "Care to help us?" the first woman asked with a grin. "I don't know how to do it," Kylos said, not really wanting to help. "Oh, it's easy. Come here, I'll show you." Kylos meandered through the grass, taking his time to make his way to the group, and stooped down at the river's edge. The woman threw a soaked blue garment at him, and as he caught it, water droplets pelted his face, and she said, "Just dip it in the water." Then the woman tossed him a hunk of soap, which he caught with one hand, but dropped on the ground because it was slippery. The woman bent over the running water and demonstrated what should be done. Kylos did his best to copy her by immersing the tunic in the river, applying the soap, and then rinsing it off. "There, now you've got it." Kylos could sense the girl watching him, so he looked up. She was still smiling at him. His cheeks were feeling warm, partly from being embarrassed about doing the older woman's work, and partly because he felt nervous about the girl watching him the way she did. But he kind of liked it. A tap on the shoulder startled him. He jerked his head around and found Bolero, a classmate of his, looking down at him. Bolero cackled and said, "What are you doing there, Kylos? Slave work?" Kylos threw the tunic into the river and stood up as dignified as he could. "They asked for my help. As an Atlantean, how could I refuse?" Bolero laughed in ridicule. Even though Bolero stood a head taller, Kylos really wanted to punch his face. So with his fists clenched and teeth bared, Kylos rushed his classmate. The women shrieked and hollered in delight at the play. The boys grappled with each other and fell to the ground. But Kylos, as if under some magical spell, could hardly move at all. His classmate outmaneuvered him at every turn, making Kylos feel like he was fighting in a pool of water. Soon Kylos was put into a tight headlock, and breathing became difficult. Bolero laughed his wicked laugh in triumph. While Kylos' chest was pressed to the soft ground, he was losing air. And across the water, he caught sight of a creature slithering in the grass on the opposite bank. At first he could not make it out, but as it got closer, he saw that the thing was a gigantic white serpent, bigger than any he had ever seen, much less heard of, approaching the river's edge. In silence it made its way up to the women, poising itself for the strike.
Cut. You're giving us the whole book, Chris. That sounds really awesome. I mean, was there a point that you were going to stop, or were you just going to give us
one paragraph later?
Oh, see, leave it to me.
There we go. That's right.
I spoiled it. No, I mean, I was thinking. I was just thinking that this is a good suspenseful moment here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's leave it suspenseful.
We shall. All right.
I'm impressed. This not only with the quality of writing, but you heard Chris say earlier that he's a theater major. So what is obviously occurring to me is that you should do an audiobook for this. I mean,
I'd like to. It's on the agenda. Yeah.
Excellent.
As well as a Kindle version on the agenda.
Okay. But don't let that stop anyone out there from purchasing this book. You can get this in a hard copy or a or you can listen to that excerpt that we just recorded there. So Chris is talking about creating a Kindle version, and I know that there's a learning curve there, but well worthwhile. I think to start putting this out, not only Kindle, but I would recommend EPUB, maybe iBook, maybe whatever you can do. Once maybe hand that off to somebody who knows how to do that, and just give them this source material, and I think there's a lot of people that can sort through some of the trickery involved with that.
Yeah, I do want to get it to as many people as I can, so because I honestly think they will enjoy the story. So,
well, I'm enjoying it, and I hope everyone out there enjoyed just the glimpse that we had there. And pardon, my interruption. I have to facilitate something here, and I have to say something to feel important. But I could easily, believe me, I could have easily said, Chris, why don't you do this alone? Why don't you just tell us? But you might get sick of your own voice if you had to run this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm just digging myself into a hole. I'm getting better though. I'll learn how to do this. That's all, folks. Thank you very much for listening, and
thank you, and please, everyone, check it out on Amazon. Son of Atlantis.
Awesome. Is it?